young children their native language or mother tongue. Watch Wild of Africa at these times only on WION. Wild is one.
Welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Modi Kampi. Life is draining out of Gaza. That statement from the United Nations aid chief, Martin Griffiths, sums up the situation in the Palestinian enclave. Just when things seemed they couldn't get any worse, the worst tragedies took place. We woke up to horrific scenes coming out of Gaza. Yesterday, that is the 29th of February, marking a horrific turning point in the Gaza war. Hundreds of Palestinians, starved and devastated by the war, were killed in indiscriminate firing. What prompted this violent action? What did they do to deserve this? Well, it seems their crime was that they were hungry. Hundreds of Palestinians were killed because a crowd of hungry and desperate civilians had gathered around a food aid truck that had come to Gaza City.
We went to get food and flour and they started shooting us. Then we threw ourselves into the streets and no one looked for us. Eventually people brought us here. There are martyrs lying around and no one is looking for them. Some need first aid, but there is no one available. Al-Shifa is full of injured and martyrs, and there are no medics. They brought us to Kamal Adwan Hospital because there was no one to help us.
The deaths occurred amid scenes of chaos on Harun al-Rashid Street in western Gaza City. A convoy of at least 18 food trucks had arrived around 4:30 a.m. on Thursday morning. Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the UAE had sent this. Crowds of hungry Palestinians swarmed around the newly arrived 8 trucks in the hope of getting food. And eyewitnesses say that chaos followed, and they say that Israeli forces started shooting. In fact, eyewitnesses say that the 8 trucks tried to escape the area, even accidentally ramming others and causing further deaths and injuries. And then ambulances struggled to reach those in need. Rubble blocked the way. Majority of the casualties occurred as a result of people being rammed by trucks trying to escape Israeli fire. Wounded and killed Palestinians were transported to multiple hospitals in northern Gaza, including Al-Shifa Hospital, Kamal Adwan Hospital and Al-Ahli Arab Hospital. Don't forget this, hospitals in northern Gaza have sustained extensive damage as well and are now barely functioning due to shortage of fuel and supplies. And according to Israeli military, a stampede took place when thousands of Gazans surrounded a convoy of 38 aid trucks. Israel said that it led to dozens of deaths and injuries, including some people being run over. According to reports, Israeli troops opened fire on the crowd, believing it posed a threat.
My understanding this far, and this is unfolding as I say and developing, my understanding thus far is that humanitarian aid vehicles entered the Gaza Strip and were overwhelmed by people attempting to essentially loot, to take that aid from those aid trucks.
Now, we are having a hard time understanding how such a thing really happened. How can hungry, unarmed Palestinians looking for food make Israeli soldiers feel unsafe? The Gaza Health Ministry has condemned what it calls the massacre of the people. They say that 112 people were killed, more than 750 were injured. The death toll in Gaza has passed 30,000. Let me repeat that, 30,000 people. This is already the most destructive assault in the 21st century. The entire world is shocked, naturally. Reactions have been trickling in from various parts. The US called the incident tremendously alarming, with the White House promising to press Israel for answers.
We are urgently seeking additional information on exactly what took place. We have been in touch with the Israeli government since early this morning and understand that an investigation is underway. We will be monitoring that investigation closely and pressing for answers.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden has said that the incident will surely complicate the delicate ceasefire negotiations.
That will complicate these negotiations. I know will.
Meanwhile, the European Commission decried what it called the carnage. The EU Foreign Affairs Chief, Josep Borrell, denounced the deaths as totally unacceptable. He said on the platform X, formerly Twitter, and I'm quoting, "I'm horrified by the news of yet another carnage among civilians in Gaza desperate for humanitarian aid." France has called the Israeli fire unjustifiable. The French President Emmanuel Macron expressed his strongest condemnation of the killings. The French Foreign Ministry decried how the tragic event came at a time when increasing and unbearable number of Palestinian civilians were suffering from hunger and disease. Paris pressed Israel to abide by international law and protect aid deliveries to civilians. And Turkey also condemned the incident as crime against humanity. The Turkish Foreign Ministry said, and I'm quoting, "The fact that Israel this time targets innocent civilians in a queue for humanitarian aid is evidence that Israel aims consciously and collectively to destroy the Palestinian people." Condemnation poured in from as far as South America. Colombia scrapped Israel arms purchases. The president denounced what he called a genocide of the Palestinian people and suspended purchases of weapons from Israel, which is, by the way, a key supplier of his country's security forces. Spain, Italy, Australia, China, Qatar, Saudi Arabia expressed horror, demanding urgent ceasefire. Already, more than 500,000 people in Gaza are on the brink of famine. The UN saying that at least 576,000 people across Gaza are facing catastrophic levels of deprivation and starvation. Today, food aid is required by almost the entire population of Gaza. It's seeing the worst level of child malnutrition anywhere in the world. Aid has been running so low that when it is available, it has often prompted panic. And this horrific incident also came at a very critical time. Negotiations between Israel and Hamas on a deal to pause the fighting and allow humanitarian aid has reached a potentially pivotal point. The killing of people collecting aid from trucks could seriously jeopardize the ongoing talks. And that really is the question. How many more have to die before peace actually arrives? Let's now shift focus to the United Kingdom. You see, when Rishi Sunak entered Downing Street as the Prime Minister, he promised a government of integrity, accountability at every level. However, the UK Prime Minister's record as far as integrity and accountability are concerned is under increasing scrutiny. You see, his man of the people facade is cracking. And how? What has he done? What's happening this time? Rishi Sunak is in the eye of the storm for accepting a private jet ride from an alleged fraudster. You got that right. In fact, Sunak's acceptance of a private jet trip funded by entrepreneur Akhil Tripathi for travel to conservative conferences has sparked a major controversy. It's because Tripathi is facing a civil fraud case related to his startup Signifier Medical Technologies. He had previously made significant donations to the Conservative Party. The opposition, meanwhile, is voicing concern about the influence of money on political access and the party's vetting process for the donors. As per the Times, Sunak has accepted over $126,000 worth of private jet and chopper rides from the donors since taking office, mainly to travel to party events. The most contentious are flights worth more than $48,000 taken by Sunak and aides to conservative conferences in Wales and Scotland in April last year. The journey was paid for by Akhil Tripathi, a medical devices entrepreneur who is being sued by investors for alleged fraud. Tripathi's donated flight was initially recorded under his name. It was attributed to a business called Balderton Medical Consultants and later changed back to Tripathi again. Balderton only has one director, Richard Kent, who, according to one of Tripathi's acquaintances, is an old friend of the entrepreneur. Akhil Tripathi made a fortune from an anti-snoring device. However, he fell out with his fellow directors and is now battling legal cases. The situation underscores the broader issue of political funding and transparency in the UK. In the year 2021, months after his first donation to the party, Tripathi met the then Health Secretary in a meeting that has not appeared in government transparency records. In April 2023, the day before Tripathi ferried Sunak, the entrepreneur attended a dinner at the Haymarket Hotel with 4 Treasury ministers, including the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt. And as per the Financial Times, one person who attended the dinner said it was around this time that the Tory Treasurer, Graham Edwards, introduced Tripathi to the Prime Minister. And a month later, Tripathi received an invitation to a business leaders' reception at number 10, hosted by Oliver Dowden, the Deputy Prime Minister. And when Sunak became Prime Minister, it was clear to anyone with an eye on the happenings at the top of government that the British public was yearning for greater transparency. His commitment, remember, was made against the backdrop of voters tired of leaders seemingly lying with impunity and playing by a different set of rules as compared to the rest of the public. And this controversy serves as a huge reminder of the need for stringent transparency and accountability measures. Some global business leaders and experts believe the UK lacks sufficient controls to prevent the abuse of public office. Analysts saying the Prime Minister could and should go further to rebuild public trust in British politics. Shifting focus now to Ukraine. You see, its front line has collapsed. Ever since Russia captured Avdiivka, what was considered Ukraine's last big stronghold, Putin's troops have been able to make big gains in Ukraine. There are growing concerns about NATO's continued support for Ukraine's forces, who, according to military experts, are both outmanned and outgunned along the front. Russian forces have been able to maintain momentum since Ukrainian troops retreated from this key Donetsk town on the 17th of February. They left in haste because they ran out of weapons. Moscow's advances since then have been incremental and are unlikely to be rapid in the short term. However, holdups in Western aid for Ukraine threaten to hand Russian forces a big advantage on the battlefield. On Thursday, Russia captured a new position in Zaporizhia. According to videos released by the Russian Defense Ministry, Russian troops have reportedly secured a new position in the town of Robotic. Russian military claims to have occupied a more favorable position. According to the American non-profit research group ISW, Russian forces are exploiting tactical opportunities that have opened up by Avdiivka's seizure. They are now trying to push as far as possible into the surrounding area before Ukrainian forces can establish more cohesive defensive lines. According to ISW, Russian troops have made advances in other parts of Donetsk Oblast, namely west of Bakhmut and in nearby eastern and central Ivanivsky. You see, Avdiivka was a major victory, but a victory nonetheless for Russia. The breaching of this Ukrainian stronghold puts serious doubts on the country's overall strategy. And that too among the holdup in the US, amid the holdup in the U.S. Congress over aid. The U.S. Senate has supported a $95 billion aid bill, remember, for Ukraine, over $60 billion being allocated for Ukraine. But it still needs approval from the U.S. House of Representatives. If the aid bill is not passed soon, Ukraine could lose more to Russian troops. Moscow is already looking for opportunities that will cement its gains in Donetsk. War experts saying that Ukraine just does not have good secondary lines. They warn that Ukraine is behind on entrenching across the front. And let's not forget, Russian military has shown it is capable of sustaining offensive pushes. In the coming days, they could also find more and more open terrain. And then what will Ukraine do? Earlier this week, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky revealed for the first time the official figure of losses. He revealed that 31,000 Ukrainian troops had been killed, although other Western estimates put the tally much higher. And that's the thing. Ukraine is not only running out of weapons, it is running out of men to fight the war. Ukraine is both outmanned and outgunned along the front. Its capabilities in stifling Russian advances will hinge on the Western long-range weapons. Reports saying that among the big-ticket items which will hopefully make a difference in the war are the coveted US-made F-16 fighter jets. Denmark and the Netherlands are among a group of countries which have committed dozens of the aircraft to Ukraine. But the reality is it could take time before these jets actually help Ukraine's war effort. And currently, Ukraine relies on Soviet-era MiG and Sukhoi jets. And one reason for the Russian success in Avdiivka was Russia's local air superiority. Russia used its air superiority to drop glide bombs. For the unversed, glide bombs are large inert weapons that are fitted with fins, so they fly further and strike more accurately. And Zelensky claims that Russia had dropped more than 3,200 glide bombs since the beginning of the year. Zelensky is saying that Ukraine's strategic goal this year is to deprive Russia of air superiority. The first deliveries of F-16s are expected this year, but with Ukrainians still training on these jets, is air superiority a goal that Ukraine will be able to achieve this year? We will have to wait and watch. A wave of panic has swept through Haiti once again. Gang violence and heavy gunfire broke out in the country's capital on Thursday. The gang leader, Jimmy Cherizier, has threatened to capture the country's police chief and the ministers. Until now, at least 5 police personnel have been killed as a result of the violence. Thousands of people have been forced to flee the capital. Listen in.
Armed gangs fall on to us. We can't take it anymore. We have nowhere to go. We run with our belongings to put them away somewhere.
Gunmen also shot at Haiti's international airport, forcing the Sunrise Airways to suspend all flight operations. The armed clashes come after the Haitian Prime Minister committed to hold general elections in August 2024. He made the announcement upon his arrival in Kenya. Henry's visit comes over the deployment of a UN-backed security mission in the country. Henry came to power after the 2021 assassination of Jovenel Moïse. The incumbent Prime Minister had pledged to step down by February this year. However, that plan has been scrapped. Henry has now asked for tight security to be ensured for a free and fair election. A decision that has sent the fighting gangs into a frenzy.
The first objective of our fight is to ensure that Prime Minister Ariel Henry's government does not remain in power by any means. The country is in a situation it can no longer cope with. The country is not run. There is no leader. The population is in a famine. People can't go out because of the insecurity. The population is tired. It can't take it anymore.
Meanwhile, 5 countries have formalized troops for the International Security Force. These include the Bahamas, Bangladesh, Barbados, Benin and Chad. Monetary contribution of around $10.8 million has been deposited to support the force. In fact, last year, Kenya had pledged to send over 1,000 police personnel to help fight the gangs in Haiti. However, the move was later deemed unconstitutional by the country's court. Gangs have largely overrun the capital. As per the United Nations, in fact, the conflict killed over 5,000 people last year and forced about 300,000 from their homes. The fighting has also compromised on the food and medical supplies in the country. Who doesn't love dogs, right? They are cute, fluffy, loyal, man's best friend as they are called. But what if they are armed? An army of armed canines, ready to shoot, trained to fire a machine gun just like a skilled shooter. Sounds like a scene from a sci-fi movie, right? Well, this could soon happen for real, and I'm not making this up. Enter China's robotic dogs. Let me say that again. Robotic dogs. Now, what does that mean? How and why are these dogs robotic? And what really is China up to? Let's break it all down for you. First things first, like I said, these are no ordinary dogs. This could end up changing the future of warfare. This could completely transform what battle scenes look like. In fact, footage that the Chinese military has put out over the last few years shows some of these dogs being a part of live military exercises. Call it propaganda or China doing what it does best, but the fact is this development cannot be ignored. The dragon is creating robotic dogs. It was, of course, not long ago that robotic dogs or robot dogs started making waves in the tech industry, from performing tasks ranging from sources of entertainment to simple manual labor. They were being pegged as a tech-enabled alternative to our furry friends. However, this is the first time that they are being repurposed for military use. In fact, recently, a team of Chinese researchers from the Nanjing University of Science and Technology tested a robot dog with a 7.6mm machine gun. It was discovered that the robot dog not only suppressed enemy firing, but also hit the target 98% time. A difficult feat for machine guns that are known more for their suppressive firepower than accuracy. And by the way, China is not the only country to experiment with robotic dogs. The US military also has a fleet of robot dogs, but the Chinese lead the field when it comes to technological advancements and the price tag. Just for some context here, a Chinese robotic dog costs $3,000, while you'll have to shell out $4,000 for just the battery pack of its American counterpart. This is just for the sake of perspective. With more countries working on robotic dogs in the combat field, questions have surfaced regarding the ethical use of such technology, and the ramifications demand careful consideration. India's fastest cruise missile, Brahmos, is the future of missile power. The missile system is not only extremely potent, but also has garnered interest from several countries across West Asia and Africa. And these countries have expressed their desire to add Brahmos to their missile arsenal, making it a highly sought-after weapon system in the global market. But you see, we are not surprised. The Brahmos missile, after all, is a powerful weapon system that can be launched from both the air and the ground. And this makes it the most sought-after choice for countries looking to enhance their missile capabilities. And India, by the way, is the only country in the world to possess the air-launched version of the missile, which has a range of over 450 kilometers. It can strike targets with supersonic speed. The missile flies at a speed of 2.8, which is almost 3 times the speed of sound, fitted on various frontline warships. It is the Indian Navy's primary weapon for maritime strike operations. And India also has offered Brahmos to West Asian countries that have expressed interest in acquiring such capabilities. In fact, reports suggesting that top Indian officials have been actively advocating for the export of Brahmos missiles to friendly foreign nations. It marks a significant strategic move on India's part. It ties in to the Indian government's ambitious defense exports target. Prime Minister Modi's government has been pushing to turn India into the world's defense manufacturing hub. He has set a $5 billion export target by 2025 for India. And as per reports, delegations from West Asian and African countries have reportedly met with the Brahmos team to learn more about its capabilities and potential. Brahmos Aerospace has already achieved major success in the Philippines, where it has received orders for batches of Brahmos missiles to be supplied in the future. The land attack versions of these missiles are now being considered by other countries. Last week, the Indian Ministry of Defense approved 5 arms acquisition contracts worth $4.7 billion, including an order for the Navy's preferred missile, the long-range Brahmos supersonic cruise missile. This comes just days after the Chief of the Indian Navy, Admiral R. Hari Kumar, declared that the Brahmos would become the mainstay of the Indian Navy. The surface-to-surface system will replace older missiles from other countries. And amid recent attacks on merchant vessels by Yemen's Houthi rebels, India has been heavily reliant on these long-range missiles during patrols in the Arabian Sea. city going to soon run out of drinking water? What if the taps run dry? Sounds scary, right? Well, several parts of the world are tackling water-related issues, and these are well-known parts of the world, by the way, including Melbourne, Cairo, Bengaluru, Jakarta, Cape Town. The question is, what if things get worse? What's the plan really? Which cities are these? Let's get you all the details. Now, if you have been following the developments, you would know by now that Cape Town in South Africa has been grappling with a severe water shortage. In fact, things reached a point where if you stay, where rationing was carried out. And if you stay in Bengaluru in India, you would know about the steep rise in water tanker prices. This has happened over the last few weeks. In fact, there has been a decision to regulate the price charged by the water tankers. But why tankers, you ask? Because they are being called in for water supply. In fact, this is happening even before the peak of summer. The tech hub is dealing with a water crisis, with the situation critical in the city's outer areas. Some RWAs or resident welfare associations have started rationing water. There are certain hours of the day when the water supply is halted, and this move is being questioned by some. Parts of the city have been dealing with water woes for months now, and severe drought is a major reason. The lack of rainfall in the past year has decreased water levels in the Kaveri River, but there has been a shortfall in the supply of water for irrigation needs as well. The bore wells are running dry because of the deficit rainfall. And then there is Mexico City. Its 21 million residents are battling a severe water crisis. It is the most populous city in North America. What's the reason there? Lingering drought. Also low rainfall over years. Local authorities, in fact, have been putting in place rations as a result of the reservoirs touching historic low levels. The water shortage has become a part of the people's daily lives. There's also the insufficient infrastructure and the unique history and geography to be blamed. The droughts have only made matters worse. The situation is also bad in Cairo. You know what the United Nations has said recently? It warned that Egypt could run out of water by the year 2025. It is projected to be a water-scarce country in a year. The water scarcity has been making headlines. Climate change and a major dam threaten its source of survival. Egypt has relied on the Nile for survival, and the fight in the region for water resources, the water imbalance has been a matter of concern. And then there is climate change, of course. So you get the point. These resources are limited. What we can do on our part is to save every drop of water, every chance we get. That, you see, is the least we can do before things get out of control. Where is Ching Gang? That big question that continues to haunt the world. How could a minister just go missing? China's long-lost former foreign minister has resurfaced, but only in the headlines. What is this about? According to the official statements by the Chinese government, Ching Gang has resigned as a member of the National Legislative Assembly just ahead of a key political event. And the timing, you see, is extremely significant. China's National People's Congress Standing Committee has announced on the 27th of February that it would accept the removal and resignation of several deputies. The Tianjin Municipal People's Congress Standing Committee decided to accept Qin Gang's resignation. The statement was issued after a joint meeting of both the standing committees, which stated that Qin has neither been dismissed nor expelled from the NPC and that his resignation has also been accepted. And you know why this is interesting? It also leads to a number of questions, in fact, because Qin Gang is the same official who disappeared from public view in June last year, with no explanation, official explanation, or even word of his death, perhaps. He just vanished. And given that this is China we are talking about, it was not completely surprising. So what should one make of the resignation and the timing of these developments? Now, some analysts believe that Qin Gang's resignation as a deputy to the NPC drew special attention since a dead person cannot resign. Which brings me to my next question. Is Qin Gang still alive? Furthermore, regardless of the reason for his resignation, it is worth noting that Qin Gang resigned as an NPC deputy rather than being dismissed. Some say that Qin Gang had an extramarital affair with a television anchor. He was stationed in the United States. Or that Qin Gang was arrested on suspicion of leaking military secrets and that he was executed in July. By the way, the news coincides with Li Shangfu's dismissal from the Communist Party's Central Military Commission, which is the primary military leadership body. Li had already been fired as defense minister and the state councillor in October last year with no formal explanation. Now, all these statements help us tie up some loose ends ahead of next week's 2 sessions in Beijing, where the National People's Congress and the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, which is also the country's highest political advisory body, will be meeting. The leaders may want to use the meeting to focus on measures to get the country's economy back on track. Last year, 2023, witnessed several prominent generals being removed from their positions, in fact, fueling speculation that President Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign is only intensifying. And those affected include the chiefs of the People's Liberation Army Rocket Force, who were also in charge of the country's nuclear weapons. In December the same year, 9 of those commanders lost their legislative seats. Despite the removal of Qin Gang and others from the National People's Congress, Li Shangfu still keeps his position. It is unclear whether he will attend the 2 sessions. However, his name has been deleted from the list of Central Military Commission members of the Communist Party of China on the Ministry of National Defense website. But you see, the Chinese officials never specified why Li Shangfu resigned. The question is, was this also a part of Xi Jinping's corruption crackdown? In December last year, the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress passed a resolution appointing the former Navy commander Dong Jun as China's new Minister of Defense. However, because the 3rd plenary session of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China has not yet convened, Dong Jun still lacks the status of a member of the Central Military Commission. And this brings me to my next question. Has the 3rd plenary session of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China been held secretly? Or are the resignations a part of a larger attempt by the Chinese government to escape media attention? Imagine the towering cranes that unload massive cargo ships at American ports. And now imagine some of those cranes being built in China. Made in China. This phrase is very familiar to people like us, and this is causing quite a stir in today's world, including the United States of America. Let me explain what this is about. Members of both parties in the US Congress are worried, extremely worried, that these Chinese-made cranes might be more than just muscle for moving containers. They fear that they could be a security risk, potentially allowing China to peek into American business or even disrupt port operations. The Transportation and Maritime Security Subcommittee of the House Homeland Security Committee held a hearing on Thursday titled Port Cybersecurity, the Insidious Threat, U.S. Maritime Ports. and invited officials from the Department of Homeland Security and the Coast Guard to attend to testify. Now, ship-to-shore cranes made in China currently rank first in the global market share. Nearly 80% of the cranes used in US ports are made in China, and the number is about 200 units. The Chinese company that produces these ship-to-shore cranes, Shanghai Zhenhua Heavy Industries. While no one's caught the cranes acting up yet, concerns still linger. The design and software of these cranes raised red flags for some time. Lawmakers in the US worry China could control them remotely or mess with their software, potentially causing chaos or even safety issues. Now, you might be wondering if there is good news after the discussion. Yes, there is. The US government is taking action. They have inspected most of these cranes and are setting new cybersecurity rules for the ports. They are even investing billions to boost American-made cranes, reducing the reliance on China. So what's the takeaway now? Well, all of the American ports are crucial for the country's economy, and the lawmakers in the US are taking steps to ensure that they are safe from potential threats. While concerns remain, the recent actions showing a united front in addressing this complex issue. And if we talk about the dependency of Western countries on Chinese products, for decades, the world relied on China's factories like a giant, ever-open store. From the toys that kids play with to the phones people hold in their hands, made in China became a familiar label. But this reliance on China, you see, is starting to shift, and countries are looking for new shelves to shop from. And where are they looking? Southeast Asia, with countries like Vietnam and Thailand now becoming popular choices for clothes and electronics. India, in fact, also is stepping up the game, of course, aiming to be a major player in manufacturing, especially for items like medicine and technology. Some companies are even bringing their manufacturing back home, closer to where they sell their products. This reshoring allows them to keep a closer eye on things and avoid potential disruptions in faraway factories. Additionally, countries are building partnerships with trusted allies, focusing on friend-shoring for critical supplies and goods. It's important to remember that moving away from China is not easy, but the shift is happening. This move will likely reshape global trade for years to come, and it will be interesting to see which new stores become the go-to destinations for the world's needs. US election authorities say they are confident they can fend off any security threats to the November presidential vote. In Alexandria, Virginia, VOA's Veronica Balderas Iglesias sat in on a training for election officers, one of the several measures to ensure a free, fair and transparent vote. Take a look.
Last month, top U.S. officials told Congress the U.S. presidential election will be fair and secure thanks to tightening safeguards and increasing cooperation between federal, state and local authorities.
From cyber threats, from physical threats, from operational risks, and from foreign malign influence. One thing to note that it's the diversity and decentralization of our election infrastructure, because it's managed by state, by 8,800 separate jurisdictions around the country. That heterogeneity gives it resilience.
In the city of Alexandria, Virginia, for example, ballot scanners are not connected to the internet, thus making the process more secure against hacking attempts.
Additionally, we test the scanners prior to every election through a very intense logic and accuracy test to ensure that they are programmed properly.
To ensure a transparent process, the city is training up to 500 election officers for the primaries and November election. They are learning about what the voting requirements are, as well as how to operate the ballot scanners and certify the results of the precinct.
How many people have checked in? How many ballots have gone through the machine? And it's happening all day long, and different people are doing it. We rotate positions. So there's no way that you're going to have an entire team of people coordinated in order to do anything shady at all.
Given the polarized political environment and potential threats, election officer Mark Dyer and others are also learning de-escalation techniques.
Maybe once in a blue moon, there will be someone who is belligerent or, is having a bad day, a voter. But most of the time, it's been a pleasant experience.
Analysts interviewed by VOA also expect that overall, the upcoming presidential election will run smoothly.
There are many, many eyes on our election system, and adversaries don't really like that. They look for soft targets, things that people aren't really looking at. And so I feel that for those reasons, there really won't be much of a security event, if any, around the 2024 elections.
But there is another kind of threat that voters should be aware of, voting advocates say.
There is mis and disinformation being sowed about the voting systems and how things work to undermine trust in our democratic process. I think that is actually a much bigger concern.
American voters are being encouraged to remain vigilant, volunteer as poll workers or observers themselves, and reach out to authorities if they have questions about how the election process works. Verónica Valderas Iglesias, VOA News, Alexandria, Virginia.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching. We're leaving you with Gravitas Images. Have a good weekend.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch